ladies. Welcome back to another episode at the Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast. So, I am very excited to have on Carlynn Winkelman, and she is one of the educational managers at Ned CBD. And I believe of all the brands that I have been affiliated with, the one that people have been begging me to bring on is Ned. And I think it's because CBD can sometimes be super, I don't know, like a touchy subject. People are like, oh, like, should you take CBD? Should you not take CBD? Is it actually good? So I wanted to bring you on because I have actually really liked Ned as a brand, but I was never somebody that took CBD. I was just like, I'm not super anxious. I don't really need this. That's what I always thought about with CBD. And I ended up on getting on a Zoom call with I think one of your herbalists. This was like a long time ago, like a year and a half ago. And I was just chatting with her and learning about CBD. And I got off that call and I remember texting my mom and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to take CBD. I never knew there were so many benefits to it. So I'm excited for you guys to kind of experience that as well. So I would love for you to just kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about what brought you to Ned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. And yeah, as you mentioned, I'm the educational manager at Ned. I also am the wellness consultant, so I really help our customers and our memberships, or our members specifically, really just give that extra attention and support in how to utilize the products when they do purchase them at Ned.
Mm-hmm.
And I first discovered Ned about 4 years ago. I've been working in the cannabis industry for probably a few years. At that point, I had originally worked in the marijuana industry and decided to leave that because it didn't really align with just where I
All the
wanted to go
things.
professionally,
Yeah.
essentially. And I started to learn more about hemp, which is essentially
Okay.
marijuana's non-psychoactive cousin. They're both part of the
Yes.
cannabis family, but they're very, very, very different. And so I started to dive in and learn more about hemp and the benefits that it can provide, but not only on a medicinal benefit, but in terms of there's a lot of functional benefits as well.
Yeah.
And so anyways, this was also at the same time when the CBD industry was really starting to blossom. And I just immediately saw right through the veil of all the crap that was out there.
Yes.
You walk into a grocery store, you walk into a health food store, a gas station, there's like 20 to 30 different CBD products on the shelf, and they're all like $20 to $30. And I'm like, there's no way that all of these products are good for you. And so I really
Right.
started to educate myself about what it means to work with a quality hemp product and what
Mm-hmm.
a quality hemp product really looks like and how to differentiate that within the industry. And so that's when I found Ned.
Yeah.
And, what really stood out to me from Ned is that they actually had an entire line of hemp oil products dedicated to female physiology, which now
Yeah.
is only the hormone balance blend. They've changed it over the years, but even still, they are still one of the only brands who have a product catered to female health. And that to me
Mm-hmm.
was huge because I have, I struggled with my menstrual health for a long time. I was going down the hormone health world and just trying to, support my own health and those that were around me. And that's where Ned came into the picture. And I just decided that this was a company. If I was going to work for a company in this industry, this was going to
Mm-hmm.
be it. And so I pretty much bugged them for a couple months until they gave me a job.
Hey, that's a good reason. That's one of the so I had Ned on my radar for a really, really long time, when people would be like, "Hey, would you ever recommend a CBD?" And I would always recommend Ned because um I'm with you on the same. I feel like CBD and essential oils kind of go into that same realm where it's like you'll go into a store and a lemon essential oil and a frankincense essential oil will be the same price. And that's immediately like, okay, that can't be right. And
Right.
when you see super cheap or people are like, it's so cost effective CBD, I'm like, that can't be right.
Hmm.
There has to be a red flag there. And I I love so much the transparency of Ned. I mean, you can go on there and learn about the farmer that, is harvesting your crops. You can literally look at which batch number you have. I mean, when I got mine in, one of my clients was like, "Hey, I have the same batch number as you." Like, it's just very nice to be able to see that whole process and how you guys educate on the importance of it. And that is what I started with, was actually the hormone blend, because I took it postpartum,
Hmm.
um, because I was like, I need all of these minerals that are in here to replenish, postpartum. And then also, we all know about like those postpartum afterbirth pains. Oof. It's like, I need all the CBD. um, so I have so many questions from my clients and my audience just on Ned and CBD, if you are ready to jump into all of those.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to get those questions answered. Would you maybe want to just start off with really differentiating Ned from the rest of the industry and why
Yes.
we would consider Ned a high quality hemp product?
Yes. Educate us on
Okay.
CBD. We need it.
Okay. Good. I think it's always like a really good baseline, right? And
Yes.
so first of all, we consider our products full spectrum hemp oil. We actually don't classify our products as CBD oil or CBD products. And the
Okay.
reason for that is because, like I said, when you go into that health food store, or gas station, or wherever, and you see those multitude of CBD oil products, that is just the CBD molecule on its own that's being extracted from the hemp plant. And to give you some context, hemp has over 200 different cannabinoids. And cannabinoids are the chemical molecules, like that of CBD, that are found in the cannabis plant. So when you're isolating a single molecule from a plant, that's going to require a lot of heavy processing, extreme solvent use, and you're going to have to add in all these extra ingredients to make it a full scale product. So CBD on its own is really only going to provide a very narrow therapeutic benefit. And because of that processing and those additives, it really isn't good for you. So
Oh, wow.
that's why that's why full spectrum hemp oil is much better in terms of your investment, because you're going to get that wide therapeutic benefit, because CBD has to work alongside those other 190 or 199 phytocannabinoids in order to produce that wide therapeutic benefit. So that's just something I really like to make note, because I don't think that many people understand the difference between a full plant
Hmm.
extract, right, and a
Hmm.
isolated CBD oil product. So
Yeah.
yeah, first and
No, I'm
foremost,
glad
I think
you
that's the most important.
brought that up, because um, I should have said something. I was like, I was aware of that, because there's a lot of companies out there that um, will say like, this has no THC, like it's literally just CBD, and this is why you want it. And I'm like, I actually think that's why you don't want it. But anyways, moving on. But yeah, thank you for differentiating that, because I think when people think of CBD, like you said, they think that they want it without anything,
Right,
because that's what you're, wanting, but you actually want
right.
it to work.
Totally. And I understand the fear and the fear around THC, and in some ways that's legitimate, because high THC levels, there's problems with that on a physiological level. But
Yeah.
when we're talking about hemp and hemp derived products, there is a federal legal limit for THC, and that has to be less than 0.3%. So even though that is extremely low, and it's absolutely impossible for you to receive any psychoactive effects, because that THC percentage has to be at least 15% or higher, it's still really important in terms of its relationship with CBD, especially when it comes to pain and inflammation. So that's
Okay.
again why it's important to keep that THC percentage in the product. But being that there is political complication with some people who work for the government or who get
Mm-hmm.
drug testing, full spectrum hemp oil is not going to be appropriate for them because of that THC percentage, in which case there is a secondary option, which is called broad spectrum hemp. And that's still that full plant extract,
Okay.
but THC has been taken out. So it's still better than your
Okay.
typical CBD isolate oils, but there are, there's going to be benefit to having that THC molecule, but of course it's not going to be appropriate for everyone.
Okay, now you made my brain hurt. We got it. So there's two different ways to basically get the benefit. Some with a very low dose THC and broad spectrum is without any.
Correct. So there's essentially two forms of whole plant extract hemp oil products. There's your full spectrum and your
Okay.
broad spectrum. Your full spectrum will have that THC percentage. Your
Okay.
broad spectrum will not. And that's just going to be more appropriate for those that get drug tested. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Okay. Yeah, no, that is really important. And also, I know you were talking about just in terms of THC levels, and I know that's something people are worried about if they do full spectrum, is like, is this going to make me high? Like how much of this hemp can I take for it to cause any of those issues? And I do get that concern too, because I've seen that on lab works with people who are on THC, is that I'm like, wow, your hormones are really screwy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely see that concern of not wanting too much of it. So can they even reach a level where THC would have that effect if they're taking the full spectrum?
Yeah, again, that percentage has to be at like 15% or higher for there to be any psychoactivity. So you're not going to get that for a hemp derived product if it's legal.
Okay.
That's only going to come from a marijuana derived product. So that's kind
Okay.
of the key. Yeah.
Yeah, the breakdown.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And then, of course, the other two main points are the extraction process, right? So
Okay.
anytime you extract an oil from a plant, if there's heat and pressure involved, that's going to disrupt or potentially even damage the biological integrity of that plant. So what we use is a cold organic ethanol extraction. It is a very slow process. It takes a long time to get that oil out of that plant, like a week actually.
Oh, wow.
And so that is what also maintains the quality of our oil, as well as what adds to the price point too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we do really like to differentiate, because you'll find when you navigate different brands in the industry, there's a lot of like CO2 processing and butane processing. And it
Mm-hmm.
just, again, involves that heat and pressure element. So you're just not going to get as good of a quality end product. So that's definitely
Mm-hmm.
another point I like to make note of. And then, of course, the sourcing, right? Like, where are we
Yes.
getting these plants from? What does that soil look like? What are the cultivation practices? And that is definitely where we place the most integrity around when it comes to the quality of our products. We have worked with a small family farm out of Peonia, Colorado, since the beginning of Ned's time. And, just to give you a little picture, Peonia is like this beautiful little town that sits in a valley surrounded by mountains. There's a river that goes through the 8-acre property. And hemp very much works in synergy with its ecosystem and with the environment that it's grown on. And our farmer, Jonathan, as you mentioned earlier, he uses all biodynamic regenerative agricultural practices. So that soil health and that soil maintenance is where all the focus and intention and investment is going towards. And that, again, is what leads to very healthy plants, and what,
Mm-hmm.
again, leads to good quality products.
Yeah, which is really important. Um, I also think like all of these points you're bringing up are very good questions that you should be asking. Like if you're like, well, I mean, you're gonna want to use Net after this, but let's just say you are already using a CBD product. This is something, or a hemp product. I should probably start switching my language. You should ask these questions. Go ask, because I think this is also an education that you want to know about hemp in general. So you said that the extraction process is a week. Now, that does seem like a long time to me, but could you compare that to what it would be with a different process just so we could see that comparison?
That's a really good question. And to be honest, I don't actually know the answer. I just know that it's a lot quicker. And when you have a quicker process, that puts a product on the
Yeah,
shelf a lot faster, so you can make
which
money
makes it
quicker.
cheaper.
So, yeah, it's just a cheaper, quicker process to use a different type of extraction method. But what that timeline looks like, I'm not clear on.
Yeah, which I mean is fine. You don't use that. You don't use that process. I was just curious because I'm like a week
Sure.
does sound like a lot, but I'm like, is it like a week compared to 24 hours? But
Right. Good
um,
question.
even just knowing the fact that like you don't want to heat it because it destroys part of the plant is important. Okay, so before we kind of dive into like what different like products Ned has, can we talk about how hemp supports you on a whole, which I think means that we kind of need to dive into the endocannabinoid system. I hope I said that right. That's such a
Yes,
long
you
word.
did.
Okay, so let's talk about it. What is that? And like, how would hemp support us?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a conversation I love to talk about because I think
Okay.
that the endocannabinoid system is still relatively new in our society. It's certainly, fairly new in our medical literature. And so I do think it's important for just people to gain a better understanding because even outside of the hemp world, it's important to understand the system.
Yes.
So the endocannabinoid system is a 600 million year old system that exists in all animals except insects, which is actually why hemp oil can be supportive for our pets, which
Oh,
is
cool.
something that we have a lot of customers who use Ned products for their pets. Anyways, we can talk about that later. But really, the whole role in this system is to modulate and regulate all other physiological systems in the body. So, our nervous system, our cardiovascular system, our endocrine system, these are all regulated to some degree through the activation and maintenance of our endocannabinoid system. So, I like to think of it as kind of like the conductor in an orchestra who's
Yep.
informing or telling all the different sectors of the orchestra when to play and when to come in order to produce that very synergistic, beautiful sound. And so that's
Okay.
ultimately what the endocannabinoid system is doing, is kind of that central system within our physiology. So if our immune system gets thrown out of balance for whatever reason, it's the activation of the endocannabinoid system that produces an enzymatic response to get that immune system back into a place of self-regulation and balance. So it really just keeps everything in kind of that homeostatic state.
Okay. Is it kind of like I don't know. I'm trying to think of a comparison here. Similar to like, when people talk about, your vagus nerve and like calming, like how that can impact so many things. Is it part of is your endocannabinoid system part of your neuro, like control or receptors? I'm trying to think of like a comparison for people to like fit it into.
Sure, sure. So I'd say that the endocannabinoid system is like a receptor network. So it
Okay.
lines
There we go.
every cell and organ of our body, including our brain,
Okay.
right? And
Okay.
then all of our systems within our body as well. So
Okay.
there's kind of two receptor systems within I'm going to just say ECS from here on out.
Okay.
So there's the CB1 receptor system, which is largely found in our central nervous system as well as our brain. So,
Okay.
and then the other side of that is the CB2 receptors, which are largely found in our immune system. And of course, some other peripheral organs as well. So, depending on the phytocannabinoids that are again found in the hemp plant,
Hmm.
they're going to have an affinity towards one or both of these receptor networks. And it's that's then going to produce a very specific response in the body. So this is ultimately why hemp oil, we can say that it can help mood or pain or appetite or
Okay.
hormones. It's because it's activating one or both of these receptors, and then that's what's producing a very specific enzymatic response in the body.
Okay, this is making sense.
Cool.
So, my next question is how can you set off this system? So like for people that are like, why would I need hemp? Like, are there factors that can make our endocannabinoid system just go haywire?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's important to know that, it's not just hemp that
Mm-hmm.
activates this system. It's also
Okay.
nutrition, proper
Yep.
nutrition, the healthy lifestyle factors and movement will
Mm-hmm.
also help to regulate and activate this system. But uniquely, the phytocannabinoids found in the cannabis plant also happen to activate this system, which is why
Okay.
hemp oil can provide so many different therapeutic benefits. So, I mean, of course, what's going to set this system off or cause dysregulation is, stress is going to be a large part of that. And,
Mm-hmm.
stress is multifaceted, of course, and our body is always going to interpret stress in the same way, no matter if it's stress that is coming from mold or toxins, or if it's emotional or physical stress. Our body is always going to respond in the same way. So that certainly will impact that system. But it's really interesting that you bring that up, because there's a fantastic researcher and scientist named Dr. Ethan Rousseau, who very much is pioneering endocannabinology, the study
Cool.
of the endocannabinoid system. And he has coined the term clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. And he claims that the dysfunction of our endocannabinoid system is ultimately what leads to or is the root cause of all metabolic disease and conditions.
Boom. Wow.
So again, if we kind of focus on supporting this central system in our body, that can in turn very much help with the rest of our holistic health.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we don't want to depend on hemp oil for that. We have to bring
Yeah.
in those other factors, like I said, nutrition and movement,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But we can also support it through phytocannabinoids as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. There's never one supplement. There's never going to be one pill that's just going to be your magical system. And that makes sense because what I think the percentage is up in the 70s of the root reason why people end up in the doctor's office is actually stress. Like it
Mm-hmm.
started out with some type of stress that then, catapulted into a different disease. Um, and so it makes sense if all of these factors are then affecting your endocannabinoid system. I can then, because we talk about hormones here a lot, and that's impacting your nervous system, obviously that is going to affect your menstrual cycle positively or negatively depending on how everything is going. So um when you're thinking about this whole system, is it basically like you want to fine tune those receptors, or are they getting blocked by you not getting enough nutrition and a good lifestyle, or is it just that they're not communicating well? I guess I'm thinking of like when things go awry,
Mm-hmm.
why are they going awry?
Sure. Yeah. I think that's definitely, it's a complicated answer, I would say,
Yeah.
and it's multifaceted for sure. But I think in the most simplistic form, or the simplistic answer, would be that it comes down to mitochondrial activity. And there's actually
Okay.
receptors that line our
Mm-hmm.
mitochondrial membrane. And so if there's
Yep.
any impairment to how our mitochondria function, there's not going to be optimized or efficient energy. And that is
Mm-hmm.
what is going to cause dysfunction in the system.
Yeah.
So I'd say that is kind of the foundation to that, without getting
Mm-hmm.
into it too scientific.
Yeah. I just always laugh at how these interviews stack up because I believe this will air before your episode, but we had a whole episode on the mitochondria.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
so I just think it's so funny. I'm like, hey, these just educational things stack upon each other.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so could hemp, like using hemp, ever become a crutch, like where you just are so dependent upon it, um, in terms of, I don't know, pain or stress? Like, I don't know. I can see how it's very, very supportive, but does it ever become something where it's like, oh, you didn't take it for a week and your life just kind of turned upside down?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, I think that people with crutches, there's a very mental aspect to that,
Hmm.
right? So in some
Yeah.
way, sure, like anything could be a crutch.
Hmm.
Sugar, candy could be a
Yeah.
crutch. You know what I mean? And if you don't have that after
Hmm.
having it for so long, you're definitely going to notice something,
Hmm.
whether that's negative or positive. So, in some ways, sure, I think it could be a crutch like anything else. Now, is there going to be um, a physiological response that is
Hmm.
so negative that it feels like you've set yourself back health wise? No, I don't think that that
Yeah.
would be the case. Hemp oil really is a supportive tool, but it's not going to, like you said, it's not going to be the end all solution. So we want to utilize it in a way that is like any tool that we would utilize. It's something that we
Hmm.
want to be using that's going to help us, but we don't want to depend on it by any means.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and I think that also answered the other question that someone had that was basically like, can you use hemp and not take care of your nutrition? And the answer is no. But is there anything specifically lifestyle wise that would support you the most, maybe with using hemp? Is it like, would, I don't know, focusing on, your circadian rhythm be one of the biggest support systems when you start something like hemp?
I'm going to actually say your liver. Your liver health is
I
going to be
love
the
that.
most important because that's how you're processing any substances or any metabolites. And
Okay.
when it comes to hormone health, that's your liver is what's going to determine how well your hormones function in the system. So,
Hmm.
if your liver is so overburdened by, again, things that are causing stress physiologically, the hemp oil is not going to work very well for you. And it might even
So
cause more
interesting.
stress on your system. So I'll give you an example. I just got shoulder surgery about 3 weeks ago. And
Hmm.
in the past, when I've used hemp oil for pain management purposes, it's been very helpful. But this time around, I actually noticed really unpleasant effects from using the hemp oil because I think that my liver was just so overburdened with everything that I had just gone through from the surgery. So I really had to be cautious of how much I was using and change my serving size to really meet my body where it's at. So I would say the liver is going to be the most important. And that's a whole other podcast episode that I'm sure maybe you've done already.
I
Um,
was like, yes, let's talk about the liver.
but yeah, I would say that's going to be a large factor into how well hemp oil is going to support your hormone health.
Oh, that makes so much sense, especially if it's starting to help bring things into balance, right? That's
Mhm.
part of a detox reaction. Like things have to move. And we talk about this all the time. Like people like to jump into a heavy metal detox or a parasite detox or whatever. You have to make sure your drainage pathways are open. So,
Totally.
just like anything else, okay, so liver support is going to be the best. Oh, I just love that. Okay. So, how consistent do you have to be with when taking hemp? Like, do you have to take it at the same time every day to notice a difference? Is it something you like, I have to take every day for a couple weeks before you start noticing a difference? What would that kind of look like?
Yeah, this is a really common question that I get a lot at Ned. And my answer isn't always liked by many, but I think
Hmm.
that I think that it's still necessary to respond in the same way, which is that it is so dependent on the individual because
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be dependent on one's health issues and the extent of those. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
dependent on how one metabolizes substances in general. And then, of course,
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle factors is going to contribute
Yep.
as well. So I always just like to provide support in saying that do whatever you feel is going to be the most realistic for your schedule, for
Okay.
your routine, for your lifestyle, right? And
Mm-hmm.
also think about what your intention is in working with hemp oil. Because if it is to address a hormone imbalance or to address, let's say, menstrual symptoms, you might
Okay.
utilize it in a different way than those that are, trying to use it for pain management purposes.
Yeah.
So when it comes to hormones, because that's the subject we're on, and when it comes to really supporting just our endocrine system, I'd say that, if you're trying to target a specific issue, consistency may be the best bet short term to really address that situation. But
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, once things start to, again, come back into a place of balance, you're going to find that you probably don't need it as much on a consistent basis, and you can use it on a more as needed basis. And hemp oil, especially good quality, is going to be a financial investment as well. So, if it's not in your financial means to use it every day, you can still get a lot of support and benefit from using it on an as needed basis. Of course, it'll depend on the individual, but that's just something to keep in mind. So if you have really painful periods and you just really want to support that time of the month, what I encourage you to do is be proactive in using it. So take it a few days or maybe a week before you know you're going to bleed, and continue using it through menstruation. But then, after that, if you don't feel you need it, you don't have to use it. So, it really is so dependent on the individual, but I think you can get benefit in both consistent use as well as on as needed use.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. So, can we stay on the hormone system for a little bit? So, how is this helping the hormones on like a deeper level,
Yeah.
because one thing that we talk about a lot here is how can you use supplements and use things to help move your body into like a place where it can heal itself and not just like,
Right.
for example, like ibuprofen. People are like, it's not fixing anything, right? So
Right.
how is hemp actually helping your endocrine system, like helping actually improve it versus just like slapping a band-aid on?
Absolutely. So, I think the very well known properties of hemp is that it has anti inflammatory benefits.
Yes.
So, I think that's pretty self evident as to why hemp oil could be supportive in that regard for hormones. And then, of course, it's going to be supportive to our body stress response, being that it has a lot of benefit towards supporting our nervous system. It is going to help with activation of certain receptors that help with our HPO axis, or hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis.
Yeah.
So just in terms of the communication between the brain and the body, that's where hemp oil can start to play a large role. So that's where it's going to kind of dig to that deeper root cause level in terms of really helping with general hormone production and making sure that things are in that regulatory state. So I would say that that's really kind of like the surface level of it all, and
Hmm.
it gets much deeper than that.
Yeah.
But I would say that that's kind of the main points to make
Hmm.
and to
Yeah.
understand.
My brain is immediately like, oh my goodness, I have no like backing, no scientific backing. So this next statement is not scientifically backed. But when you talk about the HPO axis, I'm immediately like, oh my gosh, coming off of birth control, you need
Mm,
to reestablish that brain ovarian connection. Women like with PCOS, where they aren't
yep,
ovulating regularly, like, yes, you need to work on insulin resistance. You need to work on all of those things. But you guys, something that's just so important at its core level is your brain ovarian connection. That
right,
brain has to say ovaries make estrogen. Estrogen has to
right.
say, okay, we made it. You have to have that flowing. So I'm, again, no scientific backing on that, but you guys, like, I feel like we're on to something there. Which is so cool to have that support. So, do you know when you're taking too much? Like, is there, I don't know, this tool? Because everyone's like, oh, it's so individual. Is there a like a guideline of, hey, if you start experiencing X, Y, and Z, slow down your dosage or something like that?
Yeah, I think that your body is going to communicate if you're taking too much of anything. or if something is not interacting with your system well. And the example I used earlier as to, post surgery,
Yeah.
I started to develop some like anxiety essentially, which is not
Mm,
something I experience often. And that to me was an indication that I was taking too much hemp oil in terms of where my body was at in that moment. So the normal serving size that I normally work with was not appropriate at that point of time. And it was very, very clear and evident, in which case I stopped for a few days, and then I just slowly kind of brought it in on a lower serving size and kind of titrated up higher until I felt I was in a good place. But I really do think that if you are listening to your body and you have a good intuition as to what's going on physiologically, you're going to know. But I would say that the most common responses that I have seen and heard of is going to be like fatigue in a way that is
okay.
just so overly calming, you can't concentrate or you can't go about what your normal day-to-day activities would be. I would say that, maybe some anxiety could happen as well, because again, maybe your liver is so overburdened and overstressed that it cannot handle one more thing in the body. So I would say those two are probably the most common that I've seen. But it really just does come back to understanding your own body, and like anything, taking things slow and self-experimenting in a responsible way. So,
Mm-hmm.
at Ned, we have a kind of a standard serving size to work with, but there's nothing wrong with working with less and
Mm-hmm.
slowly titrating up to maybe a higher serving size to kind of find what your sweet spot is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would just say, for everyone, is to just really just listen to the body.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I feel like this is a good step to talk about the different products that Ned has and how would you choose
Mm-hmm.
which one is a good fit for you in your lifestyle right now?
Yeah, I think that's another really popular question that I talk to a lot of people about on a daily basis. And I think that people can get really overwhelmed with all of these options, all of these different formulations, and trying to find
Mm-hmm.
what's going to work perfectly for them. So,
Okay.
I don't ever think there's something wrong with just starting with our regular full spectrum hemp oil line, because it doesn't have any added botanicals or elevated cannabinoid levels. So that can just give you a really good understanding as to how your body responds to our specific oil, and kind of get to know how hemp oil just on its own can provide support. Because, when we start to work with formulations, there's other botanicals at play. And if you have an adverse reaction, you're not going to know what botanical is not working with your physiology. So I'll use the
Mm-hmm.
example of the sleep blend, for instance. That's probably the
Okay.
most common that I find people have adverse reactions to. They'll try the
Okay.
product, and instead of getting really good sleep, they were like wired all night long. And what I'll tell them is it's most likely not hemp oil that's causing that adverse reaction. It's most likely one of the added botanicals like skullcap or passion flower that your body does not
Mm.
agree with. In which case, the daily blend is a great option because it's more versatile in that you can use it during the day. You can use it in the evening time. There's not really limitations because of that botanical formulation. So I think that working with hemp oil as a plant on its own, getting to know what that can offer and building a relationship to just the plant is always a great move. However,
Okay.
if you tend to tolerate herbs really well, and that's just something that that you're familiar with, I think that it's going to go back to kind of what your intention is in working with hemp oil. Are you trying to just gain more focus and clarity and make sure that you're really on top of your work on a day-to-day basis? In which case, maybe the brain blend is a really good option because of the adaptogenic herbs and the adaptogenic mushroom lion's mane that's in that blend. If you find that right now in the season of life, you are just so high strung, your nervous system is out of whack, you are just really looking for something to kind of calm your brain and body in the latter half of the day to just kind of like ease yourself into the evening, maybe the de-stress blend is a really good option to start with. So ultimately, it is going to depend on kind of what your intention is in working with hemp oil.
Hmm.
But like I said, everybody is going to respond to different herbs differently. So it can always be a good place to start with just the regular full spectrum hemp oil and go from there.
Okay. And then when we're looking at the different blends, I know you touched on versus broad spectrum, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and does Ned carries broad spectrum, right?
We do not. No, we
No, just
only
full.
carry full spectrum hemp oil. Yes.
Okay, so it's good to like keep in mind, I guess, if you work somewhere where they drug test you.
Yes. I mean, I will tell you that one kind of loophole that has
Hmm.
been helpful for some of our customers who do work with hemp oil, you can provide our third party testing results, which really break down the cannabinoid content and show that it is a hemp derived federally legal product, and
Okay.
provide that to your HR department and just communicate that, like, look, this is something I'm taking, this is the reason why I'm taking it. Just kind of maybe be upfront and proactive in talking to your place of work, so that it's not an issue down the road. But of course, that won't be an option for everybody, but could be
Yeah.
a potential loophole for some.
Yeah. It's definitely something to keep in mind if it's something you're wanting to use.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one that's your particular favorite?
I definitely, like I said, started to work for Ned or wanted to work for Ned because of the hormone balance blend. So for a
Yeah.
long time, that was like my primary oil that I really enjoyed working with. I still work with the hormone balance blend more on an as needed basis now when I just feel like I need a little extra support. But I will tell you, the product I use on a daily basis is our relief balm, and it's our topical.
Oh,
And we haven't really touched on topicals, but for anyone that is
no.
skeptical of working with hemp oil or has, a really extensive health history where it's hard to start to integrate something new into the system, or maybe their doctor doesn't advise it for whatever reason, topicals are a great introduction into what hemp oil could potentially provide in support. We have endocannabinoid receptors in our skin, and because the cannabinoids don't move through any fatty layers, it's immediate and very, very fast acting. So you notice a difference within 10 to 15 minutes, which is
Oh,
just,
wow.
when it comes to pain relief, when it comes to joint and muscle support, it can just provide so much relief. So, during menstruation, I like to use it on my back and my uterus, as to just kind of give some extra added support and relief. I work on the computer all day, so on a daily basis, I'm kind of rubbing my
Hmm.
vagus nerves and my lymph areas and just kind of giving some tension release. When I travel or when I'm sick, I'll rub it all over the bottom of my feet to kind of help with
Hmm.
sleep. So, I like to call the relief balm an elevated tiger balm or a
Yeah.
higher quality tiger balm, because it has like that soothing, cooling sensation. But of course, it's not derived from petroleum ingredients, so it's much better for you.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't like that. I haven't tried that one, and now I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I need to try it.
Yeah, I would say that a topical is like, that's something where you don't need to worry about how much you're using. You don't need to worry about adverse effects. I mean, there may be some adverse reaction in terms of skin conditions. That's a different story.
Okay.
But it really is going to be it's going to be more tolerated, more applicable to kind of everyone. So I would say that a topical could always be a great first step into just building a relationship with the hemp plant.
Okay. Is there a difference between like the daily balm versus the relief balm?
Yes, there are. So their essential oil profile is going to be different, and then the
Okay.
relief balm has that menthol component, so it's going to produce that cooling sensation.
Yes. Okay.
So that's the main difference. They have a little bit of a texture difference as well. But just to kind of mention, hemp is also a vasodilator. So it's going to help bring fresh oxygenated blood to that area of the body. So, for people who are athletic or who move their body consistently or who have past
Mm-hmm.
injuries like myself, this is something I use on a daily basis just for extra
Mm-hmm.
helpful relief and support.
Mm-hmm. This stacks so well with that episode we had on mitochondria because we were like, it's so important to bring blood flow to areas
Mhm.
that had injury.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys just have all the tools now. Um, well, do you have anything else you'd like to share with us about hemp now that I know to call it hemp?
Yeah, I just would really encourage people look into the history of hemp and how we have used it as a human species over the course of time, because not only is it's the oldest plant that we've used as humans, but it has really propelled us as a human species over history. So, we use obviously hemp for its medicinal properties, but we can use the hemp stock to make hemp clothing. We can use the hemp seeds to make hemp seed oil, which is very nutritious and omega-3 fatty acids. There are estimated 25,000 different commercial products that are currently very unenvironmentally friendly right now that we could be using through hemp and make it way
Mm.
more environmentally friendly. So, I just think that if it wasn't illegal within the last 100 years, our world would look very, very different because hemp, could be replace plastics. It could be a biofuel source. There's just so many opportunities to utilize hemp in a way that can really change the trajectory of our world. And so I just encourage people to learn more about this plant and why
Mhm.
we want to be supporting the industry, and really learning about how it does differentiate from marijuana very
Mhm.
significantly. So I just think that
Yeah.
there's a larger macro picture that we could have an understanding around, outside of just CBD oil.
Yeah, and I think it does sometimes hemp just gets lumped into that whole marijuana and people are like, "Well, I definitely don't want marijuana." It's like, "Well, no, these are very, very different and, affect your body very differently." So, I love that distinction.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to link in the show notes. I'm going to link the liver episode, liver support, and the mitochondria support, so you guys can make sure you get a full picture there. And we'll obviously link Ned. And you can always use, I believe the discount is Leah, which is just my name, Leah, to save 15% on your order. So check it out. And I have to go get some relief balm. So I haven't tried that yet. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Thank you so much. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and just feel so grateful to have you a part of our Ned family.
Oh, thank you.